We're going back to Brazil this week, where the second and final round of presidential elections takes place Sunday the 28th. A Jair Bolsonaro victory seems all but sealed. Bolsonaro is a former paratrooper with an agenda straight out of the far right, a penchant for rhetoric that's misogynistic, racist, and threatening, and a campaign that's been powered by social media, most notably on WhatsApp. When confronted by reports that corporations have been spending big, spreading misinformation on social media to help get him into office, Bolsonaro called the newspaper that broke that story, Folha de Sao Paulo, fake news. Sound familiar? Among the networks in Bolsonaro's corner is Record TV. It's owned by a billionaire bishop, Edir Macedo, who heads one of Brazil's biggest evangelical churches. Journalists at Record have been ordered to keep their coverage of Bolsonaro positive and to report on his leftist opponent, Fernando Haddad, either neutrally or negatively. Our starting point this week is the world's fifth most populous country, Brazil. In Brazil, it's never been easier to get information. It's never been harder to sort fact from fiction and fake news. Fact-checkers there are working overtime.
It's been brutal. The volume is huge. We have 24 media outlets reproducing our fact-checking work. TV channels, radio stations, newspapers and websites. We've managed to draw attention to the problem, but we're under no illusions that we can stop it and make the truth overcome all the lies that are being told.
Much of the misinformation is happening on WhatsApp, which is the preeminent messaging platform in Brazil. More than half the population uses the service. WhatsApp is a political force there like nowhere else. Jair Bolsonaro entered the campaign as an outsider from a small party, knowing he could not count on coverage or advertising time on mainstream media outlets. He and his supporters went all in on social media, and it's paid off. According to an investigation published in Brazil's most widely read newspaper, Folha de Sao Paulo, Bolsonaro's WhatsApp offensive has been secretly boosted by several unnamed corporations. Those companies paid digital marketing firms, experts at some of the dark arts of the web, a total of $3.2 million to push pro-Bolsonaro messaging, attacking his opponent Fernando Haddad with stories, many of which were made up. Under Brazilian electoral law, such undisclosed corporate donations to a political campaign are illegal. Bolsonaro called Folha de Sao Paulo's investigation fake news.
A Folha de Sao Paulo é o maior fake news do Brasil.
A gente fez uma apuração. We ran a full fact check on this story with sources who deal directly with the agencies responsible for sending these messages. We concluded that there has been undeclared support from businesses for a presidential candidate, and that is against electoral law in Brazil. This has been subverting the campaign. Bolsonaro has denied all accusations. After all, if he admitted any wrongdoing, he would be admitting to an electoral crime.
Assumindo crime eleitoral.
Se ele conhecia ou desconhecia.
We cannot know for sure whether Bolsonaro was aware about businessmen taking such action in his favor. The fact is, he has a tendency to repeat fake stories, untruths that do the rounds on social media. For instance, in many interviews, he mentions a book that supposedly promoted homosexuality in Brazilian schools during Fernando Haddad's time as education minister. In reality, this book had never been included in any school syllabus.
Usually, Jair Bolsonaro does not share fake material. He leaves the bulk of that to others. But he did share this image on Twitter, purportedly showing a death threat against him. When it emerged that the picture was actually 2 years old, had nothing to do with politics, and had been photoshopped, Bolsonaro deleted it. The formerly fringe politician finds himself well ahead in the polls, despite rhetoric that once would have kept him out of the mainstream.
Será uma limpeza nunca visto na história do Brasil.
Vamos fuzilar a petralhada aqui do Acre.
Pela memória do coronel.
And in 2016, when he voted to impeach former leftist President Dilma Rousseff he dedicated his vote to an intelligence officer who ran torture programs in the 1970s. Among those tortured, Miss Rousseff herself. In a campaign rife with misinformation, social media companies have been slow to react. Over the past 3 months, Facebook has taken down hundreds of accounts and pages, what it called a coordinated network built for sowing division and spreading misinformation. Measures that appear to be too little, and in the case of this election, too late.
Social media platforms keep saying they're neutral, but this is false because their algorithms decide what content each person receives. That makes them editors, but they have never taken their responsibilities as editors seriously. They announce partnerships with fact-checking agencies and newspapers to look like they're doing something, but it is completely ineffective. The issue is the business of social media. These platforms are fueled by hatred and anger, negative feelings that motivate people to engage in conversations and spend more time on the apps.
It is a fact that Brazilians trust people who are close to them more than institutions like the media or the judiciary, for example. This campaign has taken place mainly on social media, primarily on WhatsApp. People receive information from those who are close to them and believe these people.
And then there's the issue of polarization. Fake news appeals to people's emotions. So if the content you receive is reinforcing your existing beliefs, if it makes you feel confident that you are right, you are more inclined to believe it than something that contests or challenges your beliefs.
Having ascended to the front-runner position via social media, Jair Bolsonaro has since found backers on the mainstream side. Record TV is Brazil's second biggest network. It's owned by Edir Macedo, who also heads a major evangelical church. Record has not officially endorsed Bolsonaro on the air. It didn't really have to. Macedo posted his endorsement of the candidate on Facebook. Ever since then, Macedo's news outlets have given Bolsonaro a surplus of airtime, minus the tough questions they ask his opponents.
Os seus eleitores depositam no senhor uma confiança e uma garantia no combate à corrupção e também à criminalidade.
The clear bias in coverage has prompted journalists under Macedo's employ to leak stories of shameless favoritism to other news outlets, like the online site The Intercept.
Record TV has always had direct interference from its owners, but now the newsroom is really being forced to go against established journalistic principles. This morning on a radio station that belongs to them, they interviewed Bolsonaro, but only one journalist could ask questions. The others had to stay quiet. At the end, one of the journalists got up and said, "Also, I've written an article about journalists from Record's R7 website who have told me that they're no longer publishing their names against any political reports. The articles are all bylined simply R7. This is an absolutely clear sign that no one at Record wants to get their name dirty in this mud machine."
Bispo Edir Macedo tem uma longa história.
Bishop Edir Macedo has a long history as a public figure and has shown the ability to get close to most political parties. He's a pragmatist, if nothing else. Once upon a time, he was close to the Workers' Party. This time around, he has found an ideological alliance with Bolsonaro. We can see a clear proximity, not around economic or political ideas, but in matters of culture. And Edir Macedo will likely benefit from that partnership.
Media owners usually do when their chosen candidate takes power, although Jair Bolsonaro, having run most of his campaign online, may feel less indebted than most. One more thing the Brazilian media might consider as the former military man prepares for the presidency. That torture chief Bolsonaro chose to honor that day in Brasilia, he didn't just have political activists as his victims, he also ordered and oversaw the torture of news reporters. Jair Bolsonaro does not mince his words, but Brazilian journalists will want to watch theirs.